Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Ben, an absolutely wild last couple of weeks in the college football transfer portal. And although players cannot enter into the portal anymore, you take a look at some of the names that are still looking for a home in 2024, and you say a lot of good players that could help a lot of programs heading into 2024. Spent the last couple of days kind of combing through the list, going back, watching some games, looking at some numbers. I want to highlight to you guys my favorite 10 players that are still available in the portal. Fired up to get into this one. Before we do, and as always, just want to say one, thank you to you guys. And many of y'all know it's been an absolute blast for me over the last couple of weeks, breaking down these commitments. The amount of support y'all have continued to show to the fellas, it means the absolute world. I can't thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, drop some names that I might be sleeping on in the comments section. I say this all the time, but I continue to learn a ton from you guys in the comment section. We'll chop it up down there. And without further ado, let's get into this one. And I want to start with my favorite player that's available in the transfer portal, and that's former Tennessee edge rusher Tyler Barron. I think he checks off so many boxes in terms of what Power 5 programs are going to be looking for first. I mean, a ton of experience in the SEC, has played over 1,500 snaps. You look at the career numbers, 27 tackles for a loss, 13 and a half sacks. In 2023, by far his best season at Tennessee, a guy that, quite frankly, probably could have gone to the NFL draft, been a day 3 pick, 31 quarterback hurries, a 16.7% pass rush win rate, and he's really good against the run too. And when you find an edge rusher that not only is kind of that pass rush specialist, a guy that really can get after the quarterback, but also be a factor on first and second downs in the run, a lot of Power 5 programs are looking for that kind of body. Tyler Barron has done it at the SEC level. He makes, really almost every team in the country better heading into 2024. My favorite player that's still available in the portal, going to number 2, and I'm going to go with Elijah Badger, a guy that I think is criminally being slept on heading into 2024. Another guy that probably would have been a day 3 pick had he declared for the NFL draft. I think it starts with he's been at Arizona State the last 2 years or the last couple of years, but the last 2 years he's been productive, but not nearly as productive as I think Elijah Badger can be, because that Arizona State offense, for lack of better terms, it's just been brutal. Elijah Badger's been that guy. When good things have happened for Arizona State over the last 2 years, the football has been in Elijah Badger's hands. He had 99 targets for Arizona State in 2023. The next closest was only 50 targets. He was the go-to guy in that Arizona State offense. And I think my favorite attribute that he brings to the table, he's an animal after the catch. 26 missed tackles forced, over 500 yards after the catch in that 2023 year. You look at what these offenses want to do in college football. They want to get the football to their playmakers in space, let them operate after the catch. I think Elijah Badger can be that guy, and quite frankly, is a wide receiver 1 on a lot of programs heading into 2024. Big fan of Elijah Badger, my number 2 player in the portal. Going to my number 3 player in the portal, that's cornerback from Texas, Terence Brooks. Really surprised to see him hit the transfer portal. Played really well, I thought, in 2023. Looked really good in the spring game too, quite frankly. Take a look at the numbers. 45 targets faced, only 20 catches given up, a 45% completion percentage when targeted, had 3 interceptions. The number that I like the most here, 4.2% missed tackle rate. That is about as low as you'll see a cornerback go in terms of missing tackles. So he's a very good tackler. He's a big physical cornerback that can play on the boundary, wants to put his hands on opposing wide receivers. Loved him out of high school. This is a guy that I think played well during his second year of college football, but going into year 3, I think even a lot of Texas fans would say this, the sky's the limit for a guy like Terence Brooks. Really interested to see where he winds up, hopefully for my Michigan Wolverines, but one of the best cornerbacks, that's probably the best cornerback that's still available in the transfer portal. Going to number 4, and I want to go to Kent State, the MAC, and talk about CJ West. It's been no secret that almost every Power 5 program in the country wants this kind of body on the inside of their defensive line. CJ West is the best body available in my mind. 6'2", 315. He's built like a fire hydrant. Really good against the run. 24 run stops, 0.9 yards average depth of tackle. But I think what's special about CJ West is, yes, I mean, he's that prototypical guy that you want on the inside of the defensive line, can play the 3 tech, can play the nose, gives you a little pass rush juice as well. He does a really nice job collapsing pockets. And although the pass rush, his effectiveness, I should say, doesn't necessarily show up on the stat sheet, he is a disruptive force on the inside of that defensive line as a pass rusher. No doubt you bring him in to be kind of that run stopper on the inside, but a guy that can give you some value in the pass rush. My favorite big body on the inside of the defensive line, that's still available. Going to number 5 in a really interesting name, and that's Sakari Franklin, who is kind of a household name for college football fans. Put up, some incredible numbers at UTSA, transferred to Ole Miss, was banged up, didn't really get involved in the rotation. I think how you look at Franklin is say, you got to do a little bit of digging in terms of what went wrong at Ole Miss. I know he dealt with some injuries. I know he dealt with some locker room type things. Excuse me. You go back to UTSA, 266 catches for over 3,300 yards, 38 touchdowns. He's been one of the most productive wide receivers over the last couple of years at the college football level. There are a lot of programs that are looking for a potential wide receiver 1. I think Sakari Franklin could still be that wide receiver 1. And again, I think he needs to do some digging in terms of what went wrong at Ole Miss. But Sakari Franklin, it's really hard to argue with just the pure production that he has had at the college football level going back to his time at UTSA. Next one I got to talk about here is Kamani McLean. And again, you got to do some digging, right? You got to do some extracurricular work in terms of what went wrong at Colorado for Kamani McLean. But you go back to this kid as a high school prospect. We talked a ton about him, was one of the more talented cornerbacks that we've seen coming out of the high school ranks in a really long time. From a physical trait standpoint, checks every single box. You want to see him continue to put on some weight. We know Kamani McLean has the ability to be one of the best cornerbacks in the country. Got to figure out some of the stuff off the field. But if he finds a landing spot where I think he's kind of focused on just getting better at football, it's kind of a lottery ticket, if you will, right? You take Kamani McLean in. If he works out, I think you hit on an all-conference cornerback. There's a very good chance that he certainly doesn't work out. And if teams are willing to kind of take on some of that risk, Kamani McLean's a damn good cornerback, or at least has the potential to be a very good cornerback at the Power 5 level. Next player I want to talk about, and a really interesting cat coming out of high school, and that is Bai Jobe from Michigan State. And I'm not really sure why he is not getting more attention in the transfer portal. You look at Bai Jobe, was a true freshman for Michigan State last year. Obviously, the Mel Tucker incident. We knew, regardless of Mel Tucker, we knew Bai Jobe wasn't going to be a year 1 guy. And so, yeah, he didn't play a ton for Michigan State in 2023. We weren't expecting him to. He came out of high school as a top 50 national prospect, but extremely raw. He hadn't played much football. He needed to put on some weight. He's up to 252 pounds. You'll look at Bai Jobe and say, probably a rotational piece in 2024, but this is a guy that you look at 2025 or 2026, you're looking at, in my opinion, an all-conference caliber edge rusher. I don't know why teams are so soured on him, because we knew he wasn't going to play much as a true freshman. I would certainly bet on some upside with Bai Jobe. You talk about freak in terms of the length and the bend and the ability to get off the line of scrimmage, going back to the high school film. We say this all the time. The college football sport, it's a height, weight, speed game. You want to get high caliber athletes. Bai Jobe is that kind of guy. Go bet on those traits in my mind. I think he's going to be a massive addition for wherever he ends up. Next player I want to talk about, and the guy that probably should be moved up the board now that I'm thinking about it. I have him at number 7, probably should have him in the top 5. Offensive tackle Andrew Chambly, who checks off a lot of boxes that programs are looking for. And let's be honest, there are a lot of Power 5 programs that are looking for starting caliber offensive tackles in the portal. There aren't many of them anymore. Andrew Chambly, probably the last one there is. You look at him going back to Arkansas, played a lot of football as a redshirt freshman for Arkansas, was a top 200 national prospect coming out of high school. Two things you love: run, all the physical traits are there. He has starting experience in the SEC, and although didn't play amazing as a redshirt freshman, he's only going into year 3 of his college football career. You can bring him in, have him as a depth piece in 2024, starting caliber offensive tackle in 2025. Another guy similar to Bai Jobe that, I'm just going to bet on the upside. But more importantly, he has some starting experience in the best line of scrimmage conference that you see in the country in the SEC. Number 9, excuse me. I'm losing track of my guys here. Is Texas A&M center Bryce Foster, who has had some growing pains over the last couple of years, came in as a really coveted prospect out of high school. I mean, why I love Bryce Foster, he's played over 1,800 snaps during his college football career going into year 4 of college football. This is a guy that if you are looking for a center that you can just plug and play, feel good about, Bryce Foster's your guy. And again, kind of the similar conversation we just had with Andrew Chambly. There aren't that many offensive linemen that have starting experience. Bryce Foster has 2.5 years of starting experience, was a true freshman All-American for Texas A&M in 2021, banged up in 2022, played I believe started every single game in 2023. A lot of upside to Bryce Foster. I know there's been some criticism about maybe paying too much attention to the track and field and not much on the football field. He has a lot of starting experience. If you get the best out of Bryce Foster, I think he's an all-conference center for a lot of programs. We'll go bet on Bryce Foster as well. And the last guy I want to talk about is Elijah Herring. And this is a guy that I don't think necessarily has a ton of upside at the linebacker spot, but you look at his year with Tennessee as a redshirt freshman and say, played a lot of football, led Tennessee in tackles. I mean, you have the opportunity to land a leading tackler for an SEC defense that was pretty damn good in 2023 in Tennessee. You probably want to try to grab him. And you look at a lot of programs, Florida State, Colorado, looking for linebackers that have experience. Elijah Herring's that guy. And I think you bet on the production that you saw at Tennessee. I don't think he's necessarily the upside that some of the other guys that we've talked about, but you talk about being able to land kind of a plug-and-play starter that's coming from the SEC. I would do that if I'm a lot of Power 5 programs across the country. Those are my top 10 players still available in the portal. Would love to hear from you guys as well in the comment section. Appreciate y'all rocking with the fellas. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.